Wow. Talk about hyping me up. Now I got to meet this expectation. No pressure. No, I so appreciate you. I don't know why you're not in this position. You sound far better at this than I am. So I'm just, and I'm so humbled by those kind words. Thank you so much. I just love this ministry. You guys are amazing. I know in your bulletin it says my talk title is Less is More. Less is more. But that's really to say that the less of me you get, the more better your experience is going to be. So I'll try to keep it short for you all today. No, this is a sermon that's really just unraveled. I wouldn't say it's been well put together. Just say it's unraveled in my consciousness the last 2 or 3 days. So you're going to get whatever happens here, and I apologize for whatever that might be. It's not my fault. So let's get right into it. Anyone heard this statement before? Seeing is believing. Well, we hear it, but has anyone really stopped to think, what does that mean? Anyone have an idea what that means they'd like to share? Okay, so no one's ever thought about it. If you can see it, you can believe it. Yeah, you were going to say something?
If you see it, if you think it, it will come.
Okay, so what you're seeing, what you're thinking might manifest, might be attracted into your life, into your belief system. Yeah?
For me, it's like if I don't see it, it's not true.
If you don't see it, it's not true. Okay, so sort of the opposite side of that. If I don't see it, I don't believe it, and it's not true. So that's great. So yeah, that's fundamentally the idea there. Seeing is believing, right? If I'm not seeing it, I'm not going to believe it, right? Show me the money. I don't know if that relates, just it might. Ever heard of Maslow's hammer? If the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. Have you heard that before? Okay. What does that mean? Any guesses? Yeah. Working out a solution based on the tools you have, right? If you've got a tool belt and the only thing that's in it is a hammer, I got to figure out how to use this hammer to solve pretty much every solution I'm going to run into. And most likely it's going to involve me smashing it, which actually can be a very effective strategy depending on what you're dealing with, like an old television. But there's a lot of valuable wisdom to that statement. If you reflect on the fact that whatever tools you have are the only things you have at your disposal to deal with the problems that you've been faced with. And we're not all sitting in this room with the same tool belt, would you agree? We've been exposed to vastly different tools to use in life. So how we approach something is going to be a vastly different perspective based on the tools that we've been given. I was born and raised in Unity. That gives me a different perspective. Not a better perspective than anybody else, a different perspective. And sometimes it's actually been a restrictive perspective because I haven't been exposed to other religions. I have as an adult, but I wasn't raised in other religions. So just keeping that in mind that whatever tool you've been given to deal with the difficulties of life or try to solve the problems of life is the tool you're trying to use to do that with the best you can with that tool. So I want to give you this really brilliant example I just came across by H. Emily Cady in Lessons in Truth, one of our foundational texts. And so she's kind of building an example here, and I'm going to help you walk through it. She says, suppose that a dozen persons are standing on the dark side of a wall in which various sized openings. Viewing the scene outside to the opening assigned to him, one sees all there is within a certain radius. So imagine if you had a wall here. It's just a black wall. You can't see anything through it except there's just one little window. And maybe there's a different window here and there's a different window there. If I'm standing on this side of the wall, all I can see is what's through this window. And if it's a tiny little window, I'm kind of restricted to what I can see. If I'm standing at this part of the wall, it's a bigger window, then I can see a little bit more. So if we use that example, we look at this image, we might go, okay, I'm looking at the sun. This is a picture of a sun. This is all about the sun. Let's talk about the sun. But someone else looks at this and they go, no, this is about a lake. Let's talk about this lake. Let's talk about this boat. This is what's really going on here is this boat and this lake. Someone else looks at this and goes, this is about cabin. This is about off-grid living. We're here to talk about off-grid living. I'm going to tell you everything I know about living off-grid. But really, all of this is at play. This is God's view. But every one of us is looking at life through our little porthole. And what we see, we think is the totality of existence, or what we think is the most important thing to talk about, or the thing that matters the most in life. And we could stand here all looking at the exact same thing and argue about what we're looking at, and argue about what's more important, and argue about what's right and what's wrong, who's right and who's wrong, what's good and what's evil, and yet not realize that we're actually not even looking at the whole picture. We're looking at this tiny little slice of what's actually out there. You following me? So that's what she's sort of setting up here, is this concept. And so she wraps it up by saying, the fact is, each one looking at the same world sees according to the size of the aperture through which he is looking. And he limits the world to just his own circumscribed view of it. You would say at once that such limitation was only a mark of each man's ignorance and narrowness, which we would say judgment. We judge the people around us based on how they see the world, even though they're just looking at it from a different window. And I'm looking at it from a different window, so then they judge me at how I see the world, and I think they're grossly ignorant because they don't see it the way I see it, because I'm right. I see it correctly. I'm staring right at it. It's so frustrating. I'm staring right at it. How can you not see it the way I see it? You've got to be ignorant. You've got to be narrow-minded, like she's saying here. Are you starting to follow me here? We stand so firm in our convictions of how we see the world because we really think we see it. And when someone else says, that's not how it is, you go, you're crazy. I'm staring right at it. How could you say that that's not the way it is? What we think is wrong with the world is simply a product of how we view the world. You ever thought about that? Whatever is getting you fired up about what's happening in the world is really just a product of how you see the world. And the reason other people may not be fired up about the same thing you're fired up about is that they see the world differently. And neither one of you are right, and neither one of you are wrong. You're both just looking through a tiny little sliver at the world from where you are standing. What we think is wrong with the world is simply a product of how we view the world. If you're ever getting in a situation where you're getting upset that other people don't agree with you, I really invite you to imagine that picture concept again and one little window looking at one little part of the whole. And the only thing that really gets to see the whole is God, the creator of the whole, which is the whole. We can't possibly see it all. We just can't. And that should be really humbling. I grew up most of my life as a sound engineer. I was the one sitting in the little booth over there doing sound, but I worked in very big shows, very big arenas and stuff like that. And sound engineers by trade, I hate to generalize, but I'm going to generalize here because it's just true across the board, are jerks. They really think they know, is what I've run into. Each sound engineer thinks they know how this is supposed to be done. And it just comes over and over in my life. And I used to manage crews of sound engineers. And I'd been doing it for decades. And I'd come into a space, I absolutely knew more than any of them. And they would tell me, oh, no, this is how it has to be done, this is how it has to be done. But I met this sound engineer that was far better than I was. And I worked with him for probably 10 years and never knew how amazing of a sound engineer he was, because he always came into the space assuming he knew the least. And it was amazing to watch him come into a space, and he would always learn more each time he showed up assuming he knew the least. And I remember I always assumed he didn't really know that much because he never said that much. I finally sat down with him one day. I was like, dude, you know more than any of us. You are an amazing sound engineer. He's like, no, I'm not that great. I was like, I can tell just by how you're touching the soundboard, you know more than anybody here. It was an amazing, eye-opening experience for us. He's like, I've just walked through enough scenarios where I was humbled by someone greater than me when I opened my mouth. I now just assume I know the least in the room, and I'm just here to listen. And it was a huge, eye-opening experience for me. So this has been something that's been toying in my mind for the last, I'm going to say about year. This idea of where do I stand in the world, and how does that affect how I see the world? And I really imagine it as this pendulum. We talk about the far left, we talk about the far right, we talk about the extremes of things, and the center, and the middle. And we kind of put everything in these terms. Are you way over here? Are you way over here? Are you somewhere in the middle? And it really is this pendulum that seems to be constantly swinging. So I'm going to use the example of the pendulum today to try to share with you this perspective that's been on my mind. So for someone standing just slightly off center, right, we might say a center is sort of a balanced opinion between both sides. Someone who's standing slightly off center, we might look at them and go, well, you don't really get what I'm saying. You're kind of over here. But from where they're standing, the pendulum actually is off skew, and they are in the center. No one thinks they're out of the center. You following me here? We all think we're standing in the center of the pendulum. We are standing in normal. We're standing in reality. We're standing in the way it is. And that, if anything, the pendulum has skewed off to the side. But wherever I'm standing, I see people over here. I see people over here, and I go, I must be in the middle. I'm surrounded by people. Some are a little bit more extreme than me. Some are a little bit over here, and I must be in the middle. So no matter where you are in the pendulum, you think you're in the middle for the most part. And this has really helped me look at what's happening in the world today. I think I'm in the middle. I'm actually kind of crazy. The way I see the world is actually pretty crazy. But I've always assumed I'm standing in the center, but the more I kind of open myself up to it, I go, I don't think I'm anywhere near the center. So when you're center, you think, this is normal, this is natural, this is the way it should be. Right? That's what you think if you're standing in the world, the center, this is your view of the world, this is normal, this is natural, this is the way it should be. And anyone else is not standing with me here is off. Something's off about them. But even if you swing to the other side, a person on the other side now of the issue, they're over here. But even for them, they have a perceived center. And they are standing in the center. And this is normal. And this is natural. And this is the way it should be. Have you ever had a conversation with someone that they just don't get it? It doesn't matter how many facts and figures and emotions and how you scream at them, whatever you do, they just don't get it. Because both of you think you're standing in the center of what is normal, what is natural, what is the way it should be. If I'm already in the center, why would I listen to someone who's out here on the side who doesn't get it? They can throw whatever they at me. I already know I'm right where I should be. You're the one that's wrong. That's why facts and figures don't work for us anymore. They've become almost irrelevant. And then you have those that are really on the far extreme of the issue. And what's fascinating about them, when I really try to think about it, I'm definitely on some extreme on some issues. I'm in unity. That's a pretty extreme concept in this world. That my mind could actually heal my body, that my mind is co-creating my existence with God, that's a pretty extreme concept. I don't know if you guys all knew that. When you're on the extreme, now you don't see anyone off to one side. Just everyone's over on this other side, and then you think, everyone else has gone mad and lost touch with reality. I must fight to get things back to normal. You still think you're standing in what's supposed to be the center of what's right, what's natural, and the way it should be. Are you following me? I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose you. You still think you're standing in what's right, what's natural, the way things should be, but now everyone has gone off course, and you've got to fight to get things back here. And thank goodness for some of those people, because they've been some of most our extreme activists have recorrected life and got us back to center. But sometimes they start extremes. So we like to sit here and go, that person is wrong. And maybe sometimes they are wrong. It's a very complicated world. But at the extreme, you sit there and you think, well, even if I'm in the other extreme, now that whole side, everyone else has gone mad and lost touch with reality, and I must fight to get it back to normal. So the two extremes are now fighting each other to get back to their normal, not to meet in the center, to get back to their normal on the far extreme sides of things. And everyone else in between still thinks they're right where they're standing. Kind of a mess, right? Kind of a mess. And so we wind up with a Birmingham abortion clinic was bombed, killing a police officer and injuring a nurse in 1998. I'm going with older news clippings so we don't get too triggered by what's happening today. Killing people to sort of send a message that we should stop killing people. And then we have this. Vail Ski Resort in 1998. This was back when I was actually skiing at Vail. Not while I was skiing at Vail, but that period of time. The Earth Liberation Front, which is called ELF, is an international movement of autonomous affinity groups that engage in sabotage against environmentally destructive industries. That looks relatively environmentally destructive to me, doesn't it? It's a lot of greenhouse gases coming off of burning down a building. They actually burned down a Hummer dealership in California while I was out there. Caused a lot of environmental damage. But you're on the extreme, trying to get your voice heard, trying to get the world to understand that they're off course, trying to do drastic things to right the course, to be at the center where I am, which might be now at the extreme of the other end of this spectrum. Wherever you stand the pendulum of perspective, you'll find truth and facts to support your perspective. Not just made-up truth and facts, folks. This is the thing that might rattle your brain. Actual truth and actual facts to support your perspective. And I know you thought where you're standing, you had the actual truth, you had the actual facts, and they're wrong. The person standing here will find truth and facts to support their perspective, and the person standing here will find truth and facts to support their perspective. And both of them are probably just about as accurate and inaccurate. And believe it or not, the person standing on the farthest extremes will also find truth and facts to support their perspective. Now, I knew your safety net was thinking, no, I've got the actual truth and facts. Whew, that feels good. They're all messed up but me. I've got the one true source. What is it? Oh, maybe it's a podcast I listen to, or maybe it's NPR, or maybe it's Fox News, or maybe it's CBS, or maybe it's the newspaper. You've sort of hung your hat on this idea that your source of information is the one true source, so now you can relax that you only look at this source and you're safe. But what we do is we build communities around us that agree with us to make it feel like our world is normal. And we all look at basically the same media outlets to feed us the same sort of data information to make sure we feel normal. And we try not to ever really step over into here to look at these different sources of information, because then that would disrupt our world and we couldn't really handle it at that point. It's too much for me to go, wait, there's facts on different sides of the issue that both are true? That's too much for my brain to handle. I just felt comfortable over here. I'm going to stay here. Anyone doesn't agree with me, I'm going to kick them out over there so I don't have to hear them. If they don't look like me, they don't think like me, they don't feel like me, you go over there. I'm safe here in this community. Am I bothering anybody yet? If I'm not doing my job. I might as well just go home. Because I'm bothered by this. I've spent most of my life sitting in little groups going, okay, Unity's the best way. We don't like to say that, but come on, we're the best way for sure. We figured it out. Everyone else is kind of like, they're out there. But the reality of unity is the recognition that, no, we're not the best way. There are many best ways to God. And we honor all those best ways to God. We don't necessarily teach all those best ways here. We have a way here that works for us. But there's a way that works for this person over there, and there's a way that works for this person over there, and there's a way that works for this person over there. And we don't have to fight about it. We can go, hey, you might be a better fit there, you might be a better fit there, and we're a good fit here. And that's just how it works out. But it complicates things, because the mind wants to go, no, there's one best way, and I'm going to do that so I can be the one best person. So this is what we get. The whole world's talking about misinformation and disinformation and fact. Like there's only one true fact, and anything other than that one true fact is misinformation or disinformation. And that is a terrifying concept, by the way, because who establishes what is truth and fact? Because again, you can find truth and fact anywhere on that spectrum. And as soon as one person or authority says, this is the truth, this is the fact, anyone who disagrees with this is disinformation or misinformation, all of a sudden you go, I don't agree with that. Well, what do you do then? Now you're outcast from what we've all decided is what truth is fact, or one organization has decided what is truth or fact, or what one person decided was truth or fact. But in Unity we go, it's a really complicated world. We question things. We don't just accept a single idea. We go, I don't know, I might question that. And I'm allowed to question that. And I'm allowed to stand over here and say, I want to explore what's going on over here. I want to hang out with people that are unlike me and just see what their world looks like. And you're like, they've got some points here. I want to go stand over here and see what this world looks like. And you're like, you know what? They've got some points too. Darn it. Being closed-minded was a lot easier. We talk about being open-minded, but open-minded complicates things. Because you don't get to walk into the room and say, I know everything. You have to walk in the room and say, I don't think I know anything. What do you all think? And it gives all these perspectives, and you go, this is a very colorful world with lots of different perspectives that could be kind of fun if we'd allowed it to be that way, instead of trying to pigeonhole into one way. Truth versus truth. So in Unity, different spiritual paths, we talk about truth versus truth. Truth with a lowercase t. We talk about the physical idea of truth, the physical changing truth, the physical unstable truth, the truth that kind of comes and goes with basically what's happening in the world. And then you have the divine truth of what's really going on, and it never changes. And we might use a good example of love. Divine love is unwavering, unchanging, no matter what's happening in your relationship, no matter what's happening in the world, no matter what's going on in your finances or whatever's going on. But little love, with a lower L, you can fall in and out of love. You can have frenemies. You can have all sorts of stuff going on. It comes and goes. Truth with that capital T is unchanging. It is unwavering. It's just the way it is. Now, we all want to think that we've got the capital T truth. This is just the way it is. But there's probably pretty much nobody in the human experience that has anything but little truth. They've got a concept of how things work, but they don't truly understand how things work. The picture's just too big. So we want to try to get in touch with divine truth, to have a better understanding, which is bigger than my own little perception, so we at least have a little bit more insight in what's going on, and that's what we work on in Unity. I just want to have a little bit closer idea of truth, but I don't ever want to stand and say, I've got the truth, because I don't. But I want to meditate and pray to get myself opened up so I have a little better understanding of what's happening in the world. Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore said, the eyes are the perceptive faculty of mind. And unless the perception is established in truth, with a capital T, one sees or perceives duality. When one delights in knowledge that is less than truth, one's capacity to receive inspiration direct from divine mind is lessened or lost. The more we buy into our own little t truth, the less we are able to open up to divine truth. Do you see what he's saying there? Your eyes are lying to you all day long. lying to you. Your eyes are that little tiny window you were looking through thinking you're seeing the entire world. You're like, I see it the way it is. No. You've got to go inside. You've got to start tapping into something bigger than you, feeling larger than you, feeling the beating hearts of thousands and millions of people around you to go, this issue is way bigger than I possibly could have imagined. There is spirit moving in and through this entire process, and me standing from this little viewpoint, I didn't have a concept of it until I started to feel something bigger than myself. Unity co-founder Myrtle Fillmore said, this double-mindedness, which consists in believing in evil as well as in good, and perceiving and thinking about evil or undesirable conditions or lack or failure or calamity of any sort. Double-mindedness weakens the eyes and dims the vision, and we do not clearly perceive that which is our perfection in God's mind. Again, the more we buy into thinking we see things the way they are, the more we're actually shutting off our ability to see things beyond the way they are. You following me? And you see that. I've felt that in my own life. The more I go, no, this is it. I've got the facts. I've got the truth. I'm going to prove it to people. I'm going to show them I'm right. I'm feeling more egotistical. I'm feeling more rage. I'm feeling more anger. I'm feeling more hatred. The more I go, I don't have a clue what's going on. The more I have insights actually come to me and go, just breathe. Just talk to people. Just listen. Stop trying to prove something's right. And the more peace and the more love and the more compassion comes into my life, the more I think I'm right, the less I feel this oneness. The more I go, I don't know what the heck's going on. The more I start to open up to have a real understanding of what's going on. It's this ebb and flow. It's coming, it's going, it's moving and shifting, and it's so much bigger than me for me to sit here in one finite moment in time to say, I know what's happening, is ridiculous. Unity's got 5 basic unity principles. I hope you know that exists. Number 3 says we create our life experiences through our way of thinking. Do you believe this is actually true? Not just conceptually. What you think to be true, you will now experience to be true. It's what I've been talking about in this pendulum. It doesn't matter where you are on it. No matter how extreme to either end is, if you believe this to be true, you will experience it to be true. But I'm going to push this farther than you've probably conceived how powerful this is. Most, if not all, of what we perceive to be true resides as a story in our subconscious mind that is built upon years of limited view of life. Most, if not all, of what we perceive to be true resides as a story in our subconscious mind that is built upon years of our limited view of life. It's just a story we have built based on our own tiny little slice of viewing the world that now we stand on as the absolute truth. And now we argue with people, and we yell at the TV, and we yell at people on the road, and we yell at our spouses, and we disassociate with friends because they did X, Y, Z. My father, Reverend Shad Groverland, really never said anything of value, but he did say this one thing. He actually occasionally says something where I go, okay, that was pretty brilliant. And it rocks my world. I remember one time he was just talking. It wasn't really in one of his sermon moments. Regardless of the fact we're family, he'll go in a sermon moment. He's just now preaching to the family. He was just talking, and he basically said, our perception creates our universe, not just figuratively, but literally. Each of us lives in our own reality, governed by the laws of our own belief. Literally, the laws of physics change according to what you believe about life. Is that possible? The laws of what you thought were common to all of us, the laws of life themselves is it possible they actually shift according to your belief about life itself? Jesus walked on water. Do you think Jesus believed he could not walk on water? Had he believed he could not walk on water, he would not have walked on water. If Jesus believed he could walk on water, he can walk on water. Is it possible that literally the laws of life shift based on how we believe life to work? That's why you read about Myrtle and Charles when they talk about going to a medical professional and getting diagnosis. They say, watch getting a diagnosis. Because as soon as someone with expertise is considered superior to you has handed you a diagnosis, that might become your reality. You've now adopted it as your reality, as your truth, even though you didn't choose to. Because remember, it's the subconscious mind that's holding your story. This now might have become your reality. But think about this. You can sit down to a meal with a group of friends or whoever else. You could all eat the exact same meal. One person's going to say, that was too spicy. One person's going to say, that didn't have nearly enough spice. One person's going to say, that was way too creamy. The other person's going to say, it's too dry. We're eating the exact same plate of food and all having a different experience. We are affected by the laws of life differently based on our perception of how things go. And even more fascinating is that we're affecting the people around us. I used to go to dinner with a friend that no matter what, she always got poor customer service and her food was always wrong. I never had the problem. Have you ever been out with someone like that literally just creates an experience? You're like, I'm in the exact same experience with you, and somehow you make it always go wrong. She always had to send her food back. There was always some issue with the bill, and it was like, I'll go out to eat with you, but can you not order? Because you just cause problems. Just drink water, I'll eat. You can watch me eat, it'll be fine. We are literally this walking around in our own little universe, and our own little universe affects the people around us because we might have such strong beliefs in what we do, we could actually drag people into that belief system for that brief moment of time, even though that waitress or waiter is just doing the best they can right there and now, but this person so believes you're going to screw this up that you can't help but screw it up. Think about the possibility of that. Your belief of the world is actually shifting the laws of life around you. That's how powerful we are. We have these sort of silly, basic grade school concepts that have deep, powerful, lifelong meaning that we kind of just brush to the side. Don't yuck somebody else's yum is fundamentally saying they exist in a different universe than you. You can't judge it. You have no right to judge it. You don't taste food the same way they taste it, so how are you in a place to yuck their yum? You can't. Right? It's the walk a mile in someone's moccasins. You have no idea what has led them to the life and the story and experience. You don't even know what laws of life govern their universe. But you're going to sit here and judge them? Charles went on to say, Jesus recognized that the consciousness of man was submerged in the things of sense. So when he says the things of sense, he's talking about the physical world, the physical five senses. We're just so wrapped up in the physical five senses, we're not even really tapping into the divine, the God, the Christ consciousness, all this wonderful thing that's happening. He said, Jesus recognized that the consciousness of man was submerged in the things of sense, that it could not perceive truth in the abstract, and that it must, under these conditions, be stirred into activity by some stimulating force dropped into it from without. Hence he sent forth his powerful words of truth to the thirsty souls and said to them, keep my saying. Something has to step into our experience and remind us, you don't know anything. We get so trapped in our own little universe, surrounded by the people that agree with our own little universe, supported by facts and figures that support our own little universe, that once in a while something has to come in and go, oh, by the way, none of you know anything. And that's what unity is. That is fundamentally what unity is. We come in here once in a while to be reminded and humiliated. That is the... What is the process of being made humble? Humiliated. I have been humiliated so many times in my life, and it's the most powerful growth tool probably that's ever come into my existence. When I'm humiliated, I go, wow, I don't ever want that to happen again. What do I have to do to make that happen again? Well, don't show up like you know something, and don't show up like a jerk, and you won't be humiliated. We come to a space like this to say, you know what? We're open up to hear a perspective we may not have considered and to expand the way we see the world. And we're in a safe place to do with other people that said, I'm not going to judge you. Showing up with your perspective of the world. Actually, I want to hear your perspective of the world because I want to expand my perspective on the world by hearing your perspective of the world. And we'll work together to try to get a little closer to this divine truth that's actually happening that supersedes anything any one of us could possibly conceive of is happening. And that is this work. That is how important this work is. Because without doing this work, the world stays exactly the same. This war, that war, this war, that war, this group fighting that group, this group fighting that group, this company poisoning this stream, this company destroying this thing, this group of people destroying that thing, we fight over this. That cycle just goes on and on and on until we stop and say, look, none of us have it figured out. We have to do some internal spiritual work to really start to understand that we are all in this together, and there's this divine source at work moving in through our lives that we call God. That's more important than any of this. So we go back to the opening quote, seeing is believing. When I looked this up, I actually learned for the first time that's not the full quote. The full quote is seeing is believing, but feeling is truth. Well, that kind of changes it. We talk about a moral compass. We talk about, well, does that feel right to you? Even if the facts and figures you have justify your action, does that still feel right to you? Perhaps this is the best move for the bottom line, but does that feel right to you? We do this work in unity to get in touch with that feeling, which is that inner voice, which is that intuition, which is that Christ consciousness that is trying to speak to us, but is the still small voice that is often not heard over the screaming nonsense in our mind of the story of how we believe the world to be. And we don't get to feel truth until we slow enough down to connect with that voice that's going, you don't know anything. You don't know anything. Shut your mouth. Listen. Slow down. Allow. Be open to something greater than you unfolding. And that is a truth as I experience it. Let's take a little bit of a moment for a meditation to practice exactly what we're talking about here. To still, to slow down, to quiet, to release what we think we know, and to be open to something greater coming into our lives. So if you are comfortable, I invite you to shut your eyes, to straighten your spine as much as you can, to put your feet firmly on the floor. We recognize this position as our way of becoming a human antenna to the universe. The spine as a receptive antenna, broadcasting and receiving. And as we do this activity, sometimes it's really powerful to talk to our own mind and say, I appreciate all you do throughout the day. But right now, I'm going to give you a break. You don't have to process. You don't have to ponder. You don't have to imagine. You can simply just slow down and take a break for this moment. And With each breath, we allow our body just to become more relaxed, more centered, more still. And with any thought that tries to creep back into the mind, we bless it, we don't fight it. Because the mind is doing exactly what we've told it to do for the last many, many years. And so it takes time to retrain the mind. And so we say, thank you, I bless that thought, but I let it go. Thank you, I bless that thought, but I let it go. My intention in this moment is to simply be still. To slow down the breath, to slow down the heart, to become more open, more aware, more humble. There is a voice so eager to have us listen to it. The voice of God traveling as spirit, showing up as the Christ consciousness within us. Sometimes it just says, be still and know that I'm here. And so let's take some time just to be still. Whenever you have a thought of judgment, a thought of illness, a thought of anger, a thought of self-righteousness, you can say, thank you, I bless you, I release you. Because the mind is just doing what it's been designed to do by us, by the world around us. It takes time to retrain the mind to really work for us, looking for those blessings, looking for those ways to grow, being humble, allowing the ego to take the back seat. It takes time. So we don't get angry at the mind and the brain, except it's doing what it's designed to do. Thank you. I hear you. I release you. And as we go forth now from this time in the silence, this time in the stillness, we go forth with a commitment for this week to take time to slow down, to reconnect, to be still and quiet, and open ourselves to something beyond our own perspective, our own viewpoint of the world. And so it is. Amen.